As we continue, I believe this is our seventh in a series on the book of Revelation, and a very brief overview. Chapters 1 through 3 was a prologue, letters to the seven churches. Then we had the first telling of the end time events, chapters 2 through chapter 11. Now we are in the second telling, which is chapter 12 through chapter 16. And then there is a third telling in chapter 17 through chapters 22. Each one of these, as they tell the end time events, they leave out some things that the others told, and they add some things that the others did not tell. And I have mentioned that if we look at these as transparencies that you can sort of lay on top of each other, and you can sort of fit them because of the order that they do come in, and have a fairly good idea of where we're at today and what our world is looking at for the future. Now, I say our world because as Christians, we can either die before it happens, or we can be taken with the Lord when He comes, or we could possibly, in the dying before type thing, we could be affected by the fall of Babylon, which these are things that we're going to talk about. But today we're in chapter 13, which again is in the second telling. And the second telling started with chapter 12, which gave an overview from the time that Satan was kicked out of heaven, the time that the tribe of Israel, who was descendants of Abraham, through them came Mary, who was the mother of Christ, and also Joseph, who was the stepfather of Christ, as God was his father. But it goes from the time of the Christ child being born, or up to the time the Christ child was born, and then it points on to us. And after he was not able to destroy Christ at his birth, I would like to read the last verse of chapter 12. Then the dragon, who is Satan, was enraged at the woman, this is Israel, who gave birth to Jesus, and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring. And this is not just the blood Jews or the blood Israelites, but it says, those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And then chapter 13, verse 1, and the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Now, because Satan could not destroy Christ at his birth, and did not destroy Christ at his death, but had to deal with his resurrection, he is making war on the followers of Christ, who the children of God are not just the Jewish or the Hebrew by blood people, but those who are children by the Spirit. And so those who followed Christ, Satan went off to make war against them because he could not defeat Christ himself. All right, so we start with chapter 13. And I saw the beast come out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, and 10 crowns on his horns, and each head had a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had the feet like those of a bear and mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. Okay, we are reminded of the Roman Empire and the other different beasts that Daniel saw, that was Rome and Greek and right on down to the modern day. This beast that comes out of the sea, now some people see Revelation different than I see it, and they think that Revelation is all dealing with the things that have happened between Christ and now. I don't see that myself, but some do see it that way. And but here, I believe that this new empire that's coming up is the revived Roman Empire. It's in the style of the old-fashioned Roman government, and it has the attributes that Daniel gave to the leopard and the bear and the lion. And the dragon gave the beast his power and throne and great authority. I believe that this is a new government fashioned after the old Roman Empire that has the strength and the speed and the ferocity of the different peoples that ruled the world from that time to the present. The beast, I believe here, is the Antichrist that will rise up to rule the one world government. He initially will not be the ruler, but he will move into that place. So we go on. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. You know, Christ died and resurrected. This beast seems to have a fatal wound in one of its heads. So one of the leaders of this new one world government, revived Roman Empire, receives a wound that looks like there's no way he could survive, and then he survives. Okay? Give me a second. Intermission. Clean my glasses. So one of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshiped the dragon, this is the devil, because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can make war against him?" Now, even when this Bible was translated to English, this was still off in the future, and people could not see and understand exactly what we can see today. Because even today, our government, many in our government, and many in other governments around the world are pushing for a one world government. They're pushing for that today. So this is not something that we cannot fathom. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. Now this 42 months is 3.5 years. And we believe that there's a 7-year period of time where the Antichrist and the one world government will be in effect. But here he's given a mouth, and you know, I'm a preacher. Greek preacher, prophete. Prophete is a prophet, but prophete itself means a mouthpiece. I believe here that the Antichrist is giving a mouthpiece. He's giving a preacher. He's giving a prophet who appears to be a godly person, but we will read he is not. We're going to be looking at that. But we also already have many denominations. In fact, they say like every denomination in the world and every religion in the world, but I'm sure you can find people in every denomination that will betray their own people. But already they have got together and they have written up a document for a one world religion. I think I might have told you about that about a year ago. But anyway, we see here that there is a prophet, a preacher, who is a mouthpiece for the beast to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them. So the saints are still here at this time. We are in the tribulation here, and the saints are being conquered. Now, that means that they would die, because anybody who's really in the Lord is not going to give up on the Lord. But there's going to be a war against the saints, and many will be killed. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, and language and nation. So this is a one world government and a one world religion. And all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast. All those whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. So only Christians are not going to fall into this trap and say, who is like the one world government? Nobody can stand against them. We're all one people, one religion, one God for all the people. And all the religions worship the same God. We already have that being proclaimed in this world today, but we're not to this point yet. But anyone who is not a Christian is going to be worshiping the one world government and their religious leader. He who has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. This is the second time in this chapter that Christians are called to be patient. Churches that preach that preachers or Christians are not going into the tribulation period are not following what's being told here. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. So here we have this false prophet who has two horns, which is significant of strength. He has the strength like the church, like the lamb. He seems to be a strong religious leader of the church. He looks like that, but he spoke like the dragon. Remember, the dragon is Satan. He looks like a religious leader. He looks like he's really good, but what he says is straight from the devil. He exercised all authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, who's your Antichrist, whose fatal wound had been healed. So this one world leader, a one world government leader that had a fatal wound to his head, and then he lives, that is the first beast. That is the Antichrist. When the one world government is set up, one of the leaders is going to receive a wound to his head, and he's going to survive, and that is the Antichrist. Now in 2 Thessalonians in chapter 2, back in the day of Paul, there was a rumor that Christ had already come. If you're still here, you missed it. Paul, inspired by God, quells that rumor and says that will not happen. The rapture will not happen before the Antichrist is revealed and your one world government is established. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. It's not going to happen until that happens. So the rapture is not going to occur until after this happens. Now, when is the rapture going to occur after this happens? Well, we'll keep reading. So this beast, this Antichrist, because see, there's several beasts here. There's actually going to be three. There's going to be the Antichrist, there's going to be his prophet, and there's going to be this idol that starts speaking like a human. Has anybody ever seen an idol or maybe a robot that spoke like a human? Sort of common right now with AI, isn't it? Anyway, so he performs great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to fall to the earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do in behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived, and he was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that it could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. Okay? You're going to be asked to worship this AI beast that the Antichrist and his prophet have set up. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is man's number. His number is 666. All right. Back in the 40s, when they established the barcode that they put on every loaf of bread, everything that you buy, it was a new thing to put that little barcode that you scan when you go to Walmart. And every one of those barcodes has 666 in computer. The two little lines on the left, the two little lines in the middle, and the two little lines on the right, that is 666. That is the world number. Then it has the national number, the state number, the town number of what is produced, and that is on everything that is produced, that is sold with what we call a UPC code. The UPC code is not the mark of the beast. It was a forerunner to prepare the world for that type of thing. Carl Sanders, who was a young genius that I don't even know if he's still alive now, but he was back about the time Pepsi and I got married, because I got to meet him and sit down and talk with him and question him, because I was very concerned about this little chip that he created. The chip that was created that they put now in dogs, they put in horses, they put in our special forces guys so they can be found, they put them in prisoners sometimes, and you can get one yourself. When I first married Pepsi at JFK Airport in New York, if you wanted to get one of these chips, you could get a chip put in you. They shoot it into your right hand, right here, and it will go in, and the body temperature will activate it, little anti-migratory feet will pop out, and it holds 200,000 bits of information in a piece about a third the size of a grain of rice. One of the Navy SEALs that had one of those in his hand went to Long Island, where Carl Sanders was living at the time, and beat on his door, and he said, "Am I damned?" And Carl Sanders says, "No, because it is not allegiance yet." Their goal was to have one in every human being, and that was prepared by the year 2000. So these are already made, they're already ready, they're just sitting there waiting for it to become the situation where everybody has to have one. I saw a new scanning unit this past week that was designed in some other country, and it had different ways you could get your money out of the bank, and it had a handprint up there, so if you've got a chip, you can just go up and put your hand on it. These things are on top of us. They're right here, but it's not allegiance yet. Now, as I read on down, it's going to say, if anyone takes the mark, that you are damned, which means you're going to be destroyed with no hope, which means you're going to go to hell. When it becomes allegiance, you do not want it, you do not take it, you die first, or either you forfeit your opportunity, any chance of going to heaven. I spoke to some people in North Carolina one time about that, and they were questioning because they never heard of it. Well, preachers need to tell people, and you're a Christian, you need to tell people. You know, that is not something you mess around with. You do not take it. But if you do not take it, you will be killed. You will be killed at that time. So people will be running, people will be hiding, and it will be a terrible time. Chapter 14. Then I looked, and there before me was a lamb. This is Jesus. This is the true lamb. Standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name, the Father's name, written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. And the sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except for the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they kept themselves pure. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among men and offered as first fruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouth. Of course, we know that first fruits is like a tithe. These people, it says there was 12,000 from each tribe, and we know that over in Israel, basically you got Jews. You know, you have Jews and some of the tribe of Benjamin, you had some Levites, but mostly it was the tribe that were Jews, or the tribe of Judah. We know also that the other tribes made up the different European nations of the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh, the English, the Danish, and all these others that came down as descendants of Abraham after the fall of Babylon, where they went up to the Caucasus Mountains and they came down as Caucasians and went into Europe. But I believe personally that these are clean young people, and I don't believe they're Christian. I believe they're just clean, devout, good people that are marked. And I think they will become, definitely they will become followers of Christ. But the reason I say that is because I believe they're still here and doing things after the rapture. So the church will be gone. But there will be many who are good people. They're not bad people, they're good people who will be left. But this 144,000 will be marked so Satan cannot bother them, and they can It's a special group that are marked. Now again, there's some preachers that see this different than me, but I really believe that's the way it is. And I think the scriptures fit together, and these different overlays, tellings of end-time events actually fit together very well and show this. Now, let me see here. Okay. Chapter 14, verse 6. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim. Remember the white horse in the first telling? So this is the good news, the eternal gospel, to be preached to the whole world, to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, and language, and people. And he said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." And a second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries." Now, as we get into the next telling starts off with the fall of Babylon, and I'm going to get into it a lot more as we get into the third telling. But in the second telling, right here, after the 144,000, the 12,000 from each tribe, were sealed for God, it again says the good news is going out to the whole world. And then you have the fall of Babylon the Great, which has made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries. And a third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on the forehead or their hand, he too will drink of the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. He will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment rises forever and ever. There will be no rest, day or night, for those who worship the beast and his image, or for anyone who receives his mark, the mark of his name." And then again, this is the third time today in these chapters I'm pointing out, this calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who obey God's commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Christians are still here when the mark of the beast and the persecution starts. Then we have the harvest of the earth. Well, let me back up one bit to verse 13. Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." You got the mark of the beast. You have tremendous persecution of Christians. You have many who die prior to the rapture. And blessed are those who die because they don't take the mark. Blessed are those who die because they're following God. Then we have the harvest of the earth. Then we have what I believe is the rapture. As I'm getting ready to read, you're going to see two harvests. Some people say these are two great battles. I believe the second one is a great battle. But when I look at the other scriptures, I believe that this is the rapture, because this is the place that the rapture is inserted in the other telling, what we're going to read probably next Sunday, or one of the next two Sundays, when it speaks specifically of the rapture. But here we have a great harvest, and then after this harvest, you have another harvest, which is the many people who die in this great war. Okay, I think that this first one begs the question of when are we raptured? And I think because of other tellings and because of when, like in Matthew 24, it says the Christians will be delivered out of this. Okay, and I believe this is when the Christians are delivered. So if we look on a timeline, we see the one world government set up. We see the Antichrist come to power. We see the tribulation being hard on Christians, and we see the continued birth pangs. We could have World War III before this. In fact, I think it's likely. But let's read this. Okay, so here we have the first harvest. And harvest means that the crop is ripe and is taken. Okay? So in the two harvests, we're going to see the time for Christians is ripe and they're taken. And then we're going to see the time for the vengeance of God on the world. The people are ripe in sin and they're taken. Okay, so let's read it. This is starting with Revelations 14 and 14. I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man. So this is Jesus, with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he was seated on the cloud, swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Okay? And that's all it says about the first harvest. It doesn't say that they were bad or good, that they were just harvested. Now, it is elaborated on in the third telling, and at that time it talks about them being the people of God taken to heaven, and it elaborates, but this is in the timeline of the third telling, that's where it falls. So I think it definitely begs the question. If it was speaking of another war, I guess it could be, but that's not the way that I personally believe it is. Either way, in the third telling, it's very definite about the rapture. All right, now we have the second harvest in this chapter, and you can tell that this is from a great war. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and the blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles for a distance of 1,600 stadia. That is about 180 miles, which could, some people have said, oh, that's the city of Jerusalem. Some people say that is the Battle of Armageddon, which I tend to think it very likely may be, and would actually, I believe, fit the valley of Megiddo, where the Battle of Armageddon is to be fought. Okay, we have one more chapter. We have 5 minutes, and I think we can do that. And then next week we'll start with the next telling. So let me put this thing in cruise control. Then I heard a loud voice, chapter 16. Now, am I jumping ahead too far? Am I chapter 15? I'm chapter 15. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start next week. So that way we'll end up our second telling and possibly start the third next week, Lord willing. But, as I've said numerous times, and I'll say again this morning, you don't have to understand all this. You don't have to have it in perfect chronological order. You have to have a right relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what you have to have, a right relationship with Jesus Christ. And determined to serve Him and love Him with all you are, even if it comes to giving your life, because you're His. Let's pray. Dear God, as we look at your word, considering the last days and the fall of Babylon, the rapture of the church, the end time events, the time of tribulation, the time that is hard, that, Lord, we know that we're in a time of birth pains and things are increasing. We don't know what we will see in our lives. But dear God, we know that you have all power and all authority and all wisdom, all strength, all knowledge. Lord, that you love us, that you're good and merciful. So dear God, we trust you to keep us in your hands. Lord, help us to do the best we can, to serve you with all we are. We love you, Lord. Amen.